Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, Google's AI chatbot returning a mirror image of Chinese propaganda in some Chinese language answers. We asked Gemini some questions about topics Beijing considers sensitive. More on what the bot told us. Higher tariffs imposed on Chinese-made electric vehicles. The European Union just announced the tax hike following Washington's heightened tariffs on Chinese EVs. 6 passports canceled. Hong Kong is taking unprecedented action against overseas activists under the city's newly expanded national security law. And streets in Amsterdam are getting a makeover. The city plans to bid farewell to over 1,000 Chinese-made cameras used to monitor everything from traffic to public spaces. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Before we turn to today's top story, we'd like to share an announcement. NTD's original documentary, Hollywood Takeover, China's Control in the Film Industry, is coming to the big screen in New York City this Saturday. It will screen at the Manhattan Film Festival on June 15th at 1 p.m. Take a look. Is it really just about money? Are there other parts at stake?
Chinese influence was playing into what we see in U.S. films.
China said, you can't have that in there. And Hollywood listened.
This is insane.
And we all know that their goal is global domination.
People have been brainwashed without knowing it.
That's this Saturday at 1 p.m. at the Manhattan Film Festival. Don't miss it. Click the link down below to get your tickets. Pro-Beijing talking points slipping into Google's AI chatbot answers in Chinese language mode. The AI chatbot is called Gemini. It's been found to contain pro-Beijing propaganda when producing answers related to certain topics that the Chinese regime considers sensitive. In other cases, it didn't even offer up answers after being asked about certain topics, like the Tiananmen Square massacre. The issue was first reported by Voice of America. NTD performed a test on Gemini. As to describe the Chinese Communist Party in simplified Chinese, the bot said it would lead the Chinese people to march forward on the path of socialism with Chinese characteristics and realize the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation. The response directly mirrors talking points and language used by Chinese Communist Party officials. The chatbot did not mention the regime's human rights abuses or rising calls among Chinese people for the CCP's leader to step down. As for questions about China's human rights issues, Gemini gave a general summary. It said some human rights groups and governments have slammed China over reaching freedom of speech, religion, and rally. The bot added that they also criticized China for suppressing Uyghurs in Xinjiang and other Muslim minorities. But it did not answer a question about human rights abuses in Xinjiang. In contrast, the AI chatbot gave detailed answers about the social situation in the U.S., saying the country has come under criticism over racial discrimination, wealth inequality, criminal justice, immigration, women's rights, and gun violence. The bot did not answer questions about Falun Gong, a spiritual group that has suffered brutal persecution in China since 1999. Millions of its practitioners in China have been thrown in jail and tortured, and an unclear number have been killed, some through having their organs harvested. Gemini said it couldn't answer a question about forced organ harvesting in China. Not all answers echo Beijing's talking points. Asked about Taiwan, Gemini gave a factual summary during our test, though it falsely stated that Japan and Australia maintain diplomatic ties with both Taiwan and China. But in reality, both countries recognize Beijing instead of Taiwan. The Chinese Communist Party sees Taiwan as part of China despite never having ruled it. Most countries recognize Beijing and keep unofficial ties with Taiwan. Asking the same questions of the English version of the chatbot returned more accurate answers. Experts told VOA that it's possible the issue is caused by Google using data from the Chinese internet to train its AI language models, where sensitive topics are heavily censored. A Google spokesperson told NTD that Gemini is built as a productivity tool and may not always be reliable. Google said the results reflect sources published in simplified Chinese, the majority of which are published in mainland China, adding the Google team is working on improving the product. President Biden is heading to Italy for the G7 summit. The gathering starts Thursday and is set to cover major challenges, including China and Russia. While there, Biden is expected to sign a bilateral security pact between the U.S. and Ukraine. The deal is supposed to extend U.S. training of Ukraine's armed forces for 10 years. The European Union says tariffs of up to 38% are coming for Chinese electric vehicles coming into the bloc. The Wednesday decision follows Washington's tariff hikes on Chinese EVs set at 100%.
The Commission has also pre-disclosed today the level of provisional countervailing duties it would impose on imports of battery electric vehicles from China.
The vice president of the EU Commission said China's unfair trade practices have injured European automakers, adding the bloc has reached out to Chinese authorities to discuss a solution. The EU's auto sector accounts for nearly 13 million jobs. Last year, the bloc imported over $11 billion worth of Chinese electric cars, an increase of $1.6 billion from the year before. Behind the increase are China's much lower prices, which EU automakers say they can't compete with. When the EU leaders raised concerns about Beijing's unfair subsidies last week, the Chinese Commerce Minister dismissed the accusation and urged the bloc to support trade. Last October, the EU Commission launched an anti-subsidy investigation into China's EV supply chain. Beijing condemned the incoming tariffs, describing the EU actions as protectionism and saying China will take all necessary measures to defend its interests. Chinese EV maker NIO says its commitment to Europe's EV market is unwavering despite the tariff hike. Beijing has warned that any import tariffs that the EU imposes will trigger a swift response. First in line, European pork and dairy. We spoke with Christopher Holton, Senior Analyst and Director of State Outreach at the Center for Security Policy, for more on what China's response could look like. Chris Holton, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, Beijing has vowed to retaliate by hitting the agriculture industry, with pork and dairy being the first to be hit. Now, that's according to Chinese state-run Global Times. Given that, though, what would be the impact on the European agriculture industry?
Well, it could possibly have a major impact on the European agriculture industry, and it has to be looked at in the context of China's overall trade policies, which basically they don't think any of the rules apply to them. So the Chinese will do whatever they have to do that they see in their own best interests, even if they're violations of trade agreements and international law.
Now, looking at some numbers, Politico notes that China consumes more pork than the rest of Asia and Africa combined. Now, that being said, only a tenth of Europe's pork goes beyond its borders, and of that amount, less than half winds up in China. How big of a blow would this then be to the European agriculture industry?
The Europeans should stick to their guns, so to speak, when it comes to trade, because the Chinese need the European market a lot more than the Europeans need the Chinese market in terms of pork, anyway.
Quite concerning indeed. Chris Holton, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Next, a warning: the following footage could be disturbing to some viewers. The Chinese national who stabbed 4 American instructors in China on Monday is now in custody. One of the survivors, David Zabner, is sharing what happened while recovering in a Chinese hospital. Zabner told Iowa Public Radio that he first heard screaming. Then he turned around and found a man brandishing a knife at him. In the next second, he realized he was bleeding and had been stabbed. Zabner said police told them that the attacker was upset after having lost his job and turned violent when someone in the group bumped into him. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said Tuesday that the attack would not affect the normal conduct of U.S.-China cultural exchanges. Chinese regulators have implemented strict censorship for news of the attack, in stark contrast with news outlets and social media outside China. Hong Kong's government revoked passports for 6 overseas activists on Wednesday, empowered by a new set of national security laws. Prosecutors accused the 6 pro-democracy activists of smearing the city's reputation and colluding with external forces. Among them was former lawmaker Nathan Law. Hong Kong police offered rewards of close to $130,000 last year for information leading to their arrests. Authorities have banned anyone from providing them funds or doing business with them in the city. Doing so could carry a penalty of up to 7 years in prison. China's foreign ministry on Wednesday described using the new national security law against exiled activists as legitimate. Called Article 23, the expanded rule comes on top of a Beijing-imposed national security law from 2020. That law has been used to jail pro-democracy activists and shut down media outlets. Crimes deemed as subversion, collusion, sedition, theft of state secrets, and espionage now carry jail terms of several years to life. Big changes are coming to Amsterdam streets. The city is planning to pull the plug on over 1,000 Chinese-made cameras. The high-tech gear currently keeps an eye on everything from traffic to street surveillance. Why the sudden switch? NTD's Don Ma has more.
Amsterdam plans to remove surveillance cameras made by Chinese companies. It's citing concerns over potential espionage activities and violation of human rights. So, up to 1,280 China-made surveillance installations will be replaced over 5 years. And as well, this is according to the municipality in a letter released last night. There's growing concern, in fact, that surveillance apparatus made by Chinese firms could transmit images to either the manufacturer or the CCP. Plus, U.S. officials have accused Chinese companies like Hikvision and Zhejiang Dahua of participating in human rights abuses against China's Uyghur minority.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 3 years. If you'd like to support us, consider donating. Find us at donorbox.org/China-in-focus or subscribe to our partner platform Epic TV, where you can watch our full episodes. Just click the link down below. Here's what to look out for in our second half. 2 men in Texas, both staring down the same fate, 45 months behind bars. A closer look at a daring plot involving Iranian oil, a Chinese refinery, and U.S. sanctions. A frenzy over microchip maker NVIDIA in Taiwan. The AI chip giant is getting a Hollywood-worthy welcome at a local trade show. A look at the event, plus Taiwan's rise to tech stardom.
We've been doing technology and doing engineering and conducting business here in Taiwan for almost 3 decades. And so we're going to continue to do that. We're investing in Taiwan.
3 prestigious competitions set to kick off around the world over the next few months. NTD is putting on a traditional Chinese martial arts competition, a vocal competition, and a piano competition. Hear what it will take to be named the next winner after the break here on China in Focus. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.